Greetings, welcome back to Old Ways Rising Farm YouTube channel for our 5th video on the process of making these non-returning boomerangs. Now in this one what we're going to do is we're going to cut the fluting and do the final finishing on this. This is the best of the boomerangs that we've made in this series. The other one, the ones that we made from a board, I'm not going to invest this much effort in, right? So we're just going to go forth and do it with one of these. I'd originally conceived of this, and some of my talking about the series in the earlier videos were in a 4-part. At the time that I got all of the tuning done and then all of the fluting done, it was going to be like a 2-hour video, so chopping it in half. So we have 5. This is the 5th video in our 4-part series. Anyhow, this is very much a series which builds on itself. The very first video is on all of the details of the different types of boomerangs, non-returning boomerangs, the how they fit in the whole arc of world history, all of that anthropological background, as well as all the scientific background. The second video we talk about wood selection. The third video we make blanks. The fourth video we tune them. And then in this video we're going to be fluting, which is the final part of tuning and getting your maximum performance out. And I'll show you my style of cutting these flutes. It is not the only style, it is a style. Okay. We see fluting on non-returning boomerangs mostly in Australia, but there are examples of serpentine sticks from the southwest of North America that also have incised fluting lines on them. So it does occur in more than one region of the world, and it is a good modification because it allows for a turbulent flow of air to ride on the top surface of the wing, which reduces drag. Okay, it lowers the air density a little bit further than just the airfoil alone, and it reduces drag. So you get slightly faster rotation, slightly faster velocity, and it loses velocity a little bit slower. So it gets you a bit of extra performance. Okay, as you can see, this is the finished product, and it flies very, very nicely. That was a bad throw, but it flies very, very nicely. Dangers of doing things while talking at the same time. And I'll show you how we cut these flutes and how it impacts the flight of this particular rabbit stick as we go along. Come join in. This piece has been touched up, sanded down. It's been sanded to, what is this? This is my coarse stuff, 50 grit. Okay, 50 grit emery cloth. Get good emery cloth or wet dry sandpaper. I've said it many times before, and I'll say it many times again. Cheap sandpaper ain't worth free. Okay? So get good sandpaper. At this stage, I'm not going to do finer than 50 grit yet. We will do finer than 50 grit. I'm not going to do it yet, because this top surface is going to be fluted like these are. So it's a pointless effort to go and make this all silky smooth down to 220 when I'm just going to carve it up. The bottom surface is going to get scarred up in testing. Okay, so when we're done fluting and done tuning, then we'll get out the fine stuff. We will sand it all down and take it to paint it. Okay. But the next step on this is the fluting, is putting those flutings in. This is a step which it is aesthetically pleasing. It does give you a place where you can have a little of your own artisanship in this craft. Okay? And it's good physics. I do it because it's good physics, and I do it nicely because I want to make a nice thing. Okay? What it does, it's the same idea as the divots in a golf ball, making a golf ball fly farther, that as the air moves over the fluted surface, it develops horizontal turbulence, which accelerates the airflow, makes the air less dense, and therefore less drag. So you do get 10-20% more distance once it's been fluted than before it's been fluted. I've made enough of these and thrown them with and without flutes. I see that every time. I get an extra, 10-20 yards, maybe. Okay. Well, I'd say 10-20%. So what that percent equates to is going to depend on, the maximum range of the stick. Anyway, I'm hoping that this will throw as well as this one, and I'm pretty sure it will, which would be about an 80-yard stick. Without the super dense mulga wood type hardwoods, you're not going to get past that. You're not going to get 150, 120 yards without mulga wood or polycarbonate. Okay, you're not going to get it out of these low and mid-tier hardwoods. Okay. The other thing I've done at this stage is these areas where I have some split out showing, okay, from that somewhat errant split. And notice we've gotten a very good piece out of this, even though I had an errant split, right? So don't despair. Take your time. Don't despair. Don't flail at your project. Take your time, think it through, do it well, and you'll come out of it. I've sanded these all smooth. They won't hurt anything, but you do want to sand them down nice. Okay, they'll just kind of be another little bit of fluting in there. And I've taken this crack. I don't know if it's going to show up or not, but I can't get my thumbnail in it anymore because I ran some water-thin super glue down in that crack and just let the crack absorb as much of capillary action as it wanted. I did that front and back. Now, this crack would probably not be a problem even if I didn't heal it back together, but I own super glue, so why wouldn't I? And that is tradish. If you look at this one, this is one of the made-for tourist sale Australian boomerangs that I own. That is Spinifex resin. So when the Australian person who made this split this out, obviously split it out of a blank, had some errant splitting there, had a big old divot right there, and filled it up with Spinifex resin and smoothed it out. Okay? Fixing errors is tradish, right? You're not going to be perfect all the time or, ever, right? So roll with it, think it through, don't despair, but also don't flail at problems. Think them through, do them, solve them well, okay? Now, the fluting is going to give us nice aerodynamics across the top surface of this. There are different patterns that you can use, and you have a lot of freedom in this. I would encourage you to take two things into consideration. First, don't make it exactly like museum originals. The old pre-contact implements that still survive are highly culturally important, highly also spiritually significant. Okay, so this is a worldwide, in the most general terms, the production of aerodynamic hunting sticks is a worldwide technology. We've talked about that. But there are specific applications of that technology that are highly significant to specific peoples. And we don't want to just kife their designs without understanding that significance and whether or not we have the right to it. Okay, that's a key one. So I do mine very deliberately different than the Australian originals. Theirs are carved in, the traditional way to carve the fluting in the Australian originals is with a tooth mounted in a stick. Kind of like if you know anything about foot napping, you know what an ishi stick is? Mm-hmm. Well, basically an ishi stick with a marsupial tooth mounted in the tip of it, then carved and scratched across the surface. And then once steel came around, it got replaced with nails. The tooth got replaced with nails in the end of their ishi stick. These marks in this carved boomerang, oh, beloved, could you get me the biggest one over there? That one shows it better. Are made that way. Okay. Oh, no, the other big one, the Carly style one with straight lines, down. There you go. Thank you. Hand across. I have too much stuff in my way. There we go. You can see these lines there. Okay. There? Showing up well? Okay, thanks. These lines down through here are carved that way. Okay. And they would then be done longitudinally around. So I'm not going to do it that way. Right? I do want to take advantage of the physical realities and benefits of having a fluted top surface, but I'm not going to exactly replicate the Australian originals, deliberately so. Also, mine always have this Hopi style handle. This is a left-hander that I made for my beloved. And this my right-hander. You can see the opposite geometries. Okay. I use the Hopi style handle because I like it. I think it's comfortable. Longitudinal fluting, and then I'll cut this in with a knife. Okay. But again, the fluting, there are multiple patterns that you can do. It doesn't just have to be straight along the length of this, so you have some ability for artisanship and expressing yourself and expressing your own culture, traditional culture, and heritage in what you're making. Okay? Learn your traditional culture and express it in your things. So, that's a good thing to do. So the first thing I want to do with this is mark where to stop. So I'm just holding it here. Again, I've already carved in. I did some more of this with the sandpaper. The Hopi style handle that I like to use on mine. And then I'm just going to make a mark here of about where the handle section ends. Nice dark pencil mark. Is that showing up, beloved? Mm-hmm. Thanks. And that's where the fluting is going to stop. Okay? Now, there we go. I don't think that just going around, because it has this protrusion in the back, okay? And I like that there. That's part of the stability we're getting out of the stick, is having that protrusion. So that's a nice thing. But just going around like this, I don't think would look too nice. So what I'm envisioning for the fluting on here is we'll go all the way around a little bit on the bottom, and then we'll have a transition here, somewhere along this line, where above it, it's going to go up to the end, and these coming from the handle will curve down and terminate in that region. Okay. So I like to make my flutes about every 1/4 inch, and I'm just going to finger gauge this. Okay, mark that in pencil. I like these to kind of have a little bit of curve in the line somewhere. So the back ones I will curve down here, and the front ones I'll curve up here. So there's our first finger gauge line. Now that's what everything else is going to be based on. It's going to take a few minutes to lay out, but I want to show you the whole layout process. Now we'll do another one. Again, I'm just going to finger gauge it. These are also quite a bit farther apart than the Australian flutes. It's okay. Might make that a little bit more gentle. Kind of let this first one run out a little bit there at the tip. Make this one kind of ease into that curve a little bit. There. Now, for the rest of these, we're going to start to, whenever I get close to this, I'm going to curve down and terminate down in. We're drawing this in pencil, so if we don't quite like what we draw, we can always erase it. Okay. Now after a while it gets a little harder to finger gauge. The ones in the middle are the hardest to get straight. And at a certain point you just kind of have to stop gauging and freehand sketch. But again, what am I using? I'm using a pencil. And once we're past the middle, we can start finger gauging again, but now from this other side. They don't have to be perfectly even to work. But they do have to be relatively consistent, deliberate. One of the things I've seen in some people who have talked about this on YouTube is a shortcut where I've seen multiple people do this. Now, I don't mean to be throwing any shade, but I do want to mention it because it doesn't really work. Where I've seen people take it and finish it by running it over a very coarse piece of sandstone and say, oh, those sandstone marks are my flutes. No, it doesn't work that way. That those sandstone marks are just coarseness and they're causing drag, not preventing it. Will it still work? Yes. It'll work as a hunting stick, but it's definitely not the best it can be. Okay. Now we'll decide on our terminations here to this pattern once I get these sketched in. I haven't totally decided where I want the ends of these to fall yet. Just kind of guessing here. But again, we're doing it in pencil. Okay, so there's the start. Now I want to come and we'll work on this flat. Give that some space. Yeah, that'll be nice. Have those nestled into each other. And here on the tip, carry that out. There's the first of the two that are tricky because they're right in the middle. I would love to understand more about the details of fluting and turbulators in general as a design feature on airfoils. There has to be, broke my lead. There has to be an optimum size, distance, depth. I wonder if it would be optimum enough and meaningful enough to make an impact on a project like this. It would be interesting to do an experiment with something very closely controlled like the checkering files that they use for checkering gun stocks. We could have very accurate gauge distances. It'd be interesting to do that experiment and see if you could notice a difference as a human throwing a boomerang. Because there's making a difference and then there's making a difference, right? I'm wondering if the spacing would ever make a difference that a person could notice in a hand-thrown device. There are also fluting patterns that don't go exactly linear. That'll spiral or curve, make other sorts of designs. A lot of those I know have spiritual meaning with the Australian people. So again, don't exactly copy those, but also don't slavishly follow what I'm doing just because. If you want to see a lot of information about the typologies, you can wander on over to the Old Ways Rising Farm Patreon page. Check out the compilation of historic boomerang sources that I have over there. It's free to all patrons at any level. You can check out the more modern published resources that are mentioned in the first video in this series. So there's an option. I'm just looking at it, deciding if I want to change anything there. What do you think, beloved?
I think it looks awesome.
You like it?
Yeah.
Carve it that way?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Go for it.
Cool. I'll start back here, and if I decide to manipulate anything up there, well, you'll see it when it's done. Where did I put my knife? I just brought it over. I'm losing my tools. Found it! Now, I like to use the hawksbill knife for this, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use chip carving techniques. You can just use this dust as a little bit of chalkboard. I'm going to cut a V, a series of V's in, and then use sandpaper to round over the tops in between. Okay, that's the strategy. So I'll just start here on the top where you can see it well. To cut a V with the hawksbill knife, just do 3, 4, 5 centimeters at a time. Don't go wild. Don't try to cut the whole line at once. And just cut down on one side, down to my stop mark, and then cut down on the other side. Now, because we have a stop line here, got a plunge cut right there. And if the chip doesn't come out, don't pry it with your hawksbill knife. Come back and recut it. I like doing it this way because I have a lot of control over what's happening. Okay. Now in this horn beam that I'm using here, you can adjust the size as you want. And in fruit woods, these are hard, but they're buttery smooth. You can see the line I just cut. Okay. They're hard, but they're buttery smooth. It works very, very nicely. In coarser material, like these two, the black, this is black locust, that one's ash. It's a lot more chattery when you're doing this. It's kind of a pain in the neck. But it works very nicely with this. And then if I just do the one adjacent, can they see, or is my shoulder getting in the way?
Your hand's getting in the way. Unfortunately, just a
yeah, I don't think I can really solve that. In a setup that only has one camera, I don't think I can solve that. Anyway, this is just basic chip carving lines. Okay. So there's my two lines and my flat in between. So I will just go, and I'll go all the way around this distance, and then I'll step back, and I'll do this section, go all the way around that section, step back and do this, and go all the way around that section. Just work my way along. Every so often, you'll kind of rub off your pencil line, so keep a pencil handy, and if you lose a line, just sketch it back in. Right? With pencil, you can modify it till you're done. This is going to be real smudgy, real ugly, real dirty from all of this pencil lead. And don't worry if you get one of these lines off a little bit, don't sweat it. We'll talk about refining these later. Right now, we just want to get them in, get them established. Okay? Refinement will come next. Now, this is multiple hours of work getting all of these cut in with the knife. I'm not going to subject you to all of that on YouTube, so I'm going to pause the video now. I'll get all of these cut in to that stage, and then we'll talk about the next stage of refinement. We are coming into the home stretch on this. All of the fluting is carved. They're right over those lines, and I haven't done anything here with any tool other than that hawksbill knife, one of my absolute favorite carving tools. The fluting has helped it a bit with distance, okay? But you won't see, I'm going to throw it here in a second, but you won't see quite its full maximum distance because the fluting is still a very sharp angle. Just a very sharp gouge from taking that knife blade in and carving those out. So, other ways you could do this, other tools that you could use. You could use a V-gouge and cut these flutes. Okay. You could use a riffler. I haven't used a V-gouge. I have used a riffler. I didn't like the riffler. It does work. And I do have some still that I've used the riffler on, but it ended up being more work than just cutting them in with a knife. Okay. The thing you will notice when you're cutting this with a knife or a gouge, with a sharp bladed tool like that, is this is not basswood, right? This is not basswood by any stretch of the imagination. This is more than 4 times harder than basswood. Okay. So when you're cutting in with your knife, the blade, instead of cutting through small wiggles in the grain, is going to want to follow them. So you just want to go in small, short sections, be deliberate, and at any point that you feel the blade catching and pulling to one side or the other, stop, come back at it from the other direction, and just work your way through. But with careful attention to detail and a nice sharp knife, you can absolutely do it. Now, the lines are not perfectly straight. They're pretty darn good, but they're not perfectly straight because of that, because of how difficult it is to keep it tracking true, especially when we get into like this section where we have curly grain. Okay, you'll always have some curly grain there at the sharp ends. But I'm happy with it. We'll straighten all of that out in the next step. But before the next step, I do want to chuck it. I'm hoping you can hear it. These have a slight sound when they fly. When they're properly tuned, all of this is smoothed out just exactly the way you want it. It'll be a very hushed sort of wing beat sound, right? Currently, it's a very loud, sharp whistle, and I'm hoping you can hear that. Okay. Not the best throw ever. I'm going to go grab her, do her again. Okay, second shot. Okay. So you have that louder whistle. What's doing that is drag around those really sharp junctures to those flutes. So as we sand those off and work it down into its finished condition, that will diminish. Now, how I like to do this and round and finish off these flutes is just to take a piece of, 50 to 80 grit sandpaper. You need good quality cloth-backed emery cloth in order to make this work. Don't use cheap sandpaper. All you're going to do is 1 or 2 strokes and all the sand's going to fall off it. You're just going to get frustrated. Use good sandpaper. And I'm just going to fold over a little bit there. And then come into these grooves and sand against the sharp angle. Okay? And then, we'll do the other side. Okay? And that's really all it takes to shape that section of one flute right in between my 2 fingers. That shape, that's rounded off enough. Now, there's some deep sand scratches in it because this is 50 grit. Okay, so I will do this again. I will go over the whole thing with the 50 grit, and while I'm doing that, there might be little places right like here. There's a little lump there that I'll probably take a little bit more off with the knife. Okay, you can whittle these. I just prefer to use the sandpaper because when you're trying to whittle against this woogity grain, it's real easy to pull out bigger chunks than you intended. Okay, so that's why I like to use the sandpaper and recommend using the sandpaper. But there are some spots where I need to move a big chunk out, and I will do that with the knife. Then I'll come back over the whole thing again with 150 grit, and then I'll throw it again for you. All of these ridges have been rough sanded to round. Now, this is still a 50 grit finish. This is not quite taken all the way to the finished condition such as this one is. We will throw it a bit. We will look at how far it goes. We will see if anything else needs done. Then I will take it in. There's a little moisture in the grass. I'll let it completely dry out, sand it all the way down to 220, and paint it. Okay, just as this one is. That final sanding and painting will eke an extra couple of yards out, but it's pretty darn close to what it's going to be. The paint I used, I wanted to talk a bit about. This is the linseed oil and earth pigment paint that I make myself. If you're interested in how I do that, I've shown the whole process in the duck decoy playlist. Okay, that's where I talked about all of the paint making and all of that. So I'll put a link to the first of the paint making videos in the end screen of this video. So watch all the way through, click the end screen, and you'll see how to make the paint I put on this. So that does eke a little bit out, and it's very much an advantage to put a coating on this. One, so that you can see it, right? The red, the barn red color shows up very nicely against the grass, and it makes it look not like a stick. So guess what? There's more. Your stick is not the only stick in the world of sticks, right? So having a different color that is less abundant in nature is very advantageous. And it keeps the wood from absorbing moisture. Anytime the wood gets wet, it raises the grain, and then you have to resand it. Okay? So you definitely want to coat these if you're going to be throwing them outside. Now, if you're making a wall hanger and you're going to throw it 3 or 4 times and you live in Arizona and then put it on a wall, fine. If you just want to showcase the wood, great. Go for it. Do your thing. But here in the humid east, you definitely want to paint your sticks. So that's a tip. Link in the end screen. Now I'm going to throw this one. This one is at the point where you quit messing with it. Okay, and I'll show you why. I'm going to go, we're pointing out across, flat level across the field here so I can do a good distance throw. It's quieted down a bit. You probably won't hear it. It still has the boomerang, like little muffled wing flutter, but it's not loud and whistly like the last clip. Probably won't pick up in the camera. Okay. That throw is a little bit higher than I would have preferred, but I'm just going for distance here, not for accuracy. I'll try to get the next one flat across the ground. But you can see the behavior. It moves forward until it runs out of energy, and then it picks up and dances a little and drops straight down. When you see that behavior, you have tuned it to the maximum capacity of that stick, that density, that design. Stop fussing with it. Okay? Watch again. I'm going to do another throw, hopefully a little flatter to the ground on this one. Veered off a little bit, but you can see that same basic behavior. Ever get that feeling like you're playing catch with yourself? One more for good measure. I don't have a good measure. Try another.
Okay.
One more for good measure. Fair. So when you see that good behavior, when you see that straight flight, level path, only veering, dancing, rising up a little, right at the very end, when it loses torque and the wingtips pick up and it stalls. That's the behavior you want to see. That tells you, quit. Stop fussing with it. You have the best aerodynamics that a particular material and design will allow you to have. There is a danger in continuing to trying to get another yard and another yard and another yard and another yard. When I was working on this one, okay, similar size, this one weighs considerably less than this one does, okay? I kept fussing with it, thinning it out, messing with it, steam bending the tips up, steam bending the tips down, kept messing with it. And it would go a certain distance, and then I'd try to get a little bit more, and as soon as I got a little bit more, it would lose stability or veer or misbehave, right? So I ended up, after all of that fussing with a stick that is nice and thin, and this would be a really good stick if it was live oak, but it's ash. Because it's ash, and I got it too thin for what ash should be, it just doesn't have enough mass to carry through a throw. You can see it's got much more of a ballistic trajectory. I lost too much lift, I lost too much thickness, I lost too much mass. And that stick will never go as far as the one I just made. Because it just doesn't have enough mass in the right profiles anymore to carry through. And when I try to steam bend, it loses stability because, I can steam bend to compensate for the thinness, but it loses stability because the wood's too light. Now if you compare these two, these are about the same mass, right? This one is considerably larger and wider, okay? This is also ash. This can go considerably farther than the one I just made on a best throw. There's more surface to help it with the glide. It's longer, and because it's wider and longer, I can make it thinner, better cross-sectional area, better ballistic coefficient, okay? But it still has the mass to carry the distance. Okay? So that is considerably better than the one I just made. So the red one just outdistanced the one we made together by about 10-15 meters, right? And that's in the physical dimensions and the size. To try and get this stick to match this stick would be a fool's errand. You're going to ruin it trying. So you're looking for that behavior, that overall flight profile, to tell you when to stop. Not every stick has the same capacity for range. Okay? And within a design, not every material has the same capacity for range. This is the inferior material relative to this one. So if this one was made out of hop horn beam like this one is, it would have another 10 meters. So all of that happens at the beginning, the choosing the right crook, the choosing the right material in the first place. But don't be discouraged if you don't have hop horn beam in your area, or if you only have hop horn beam in your area and you're not going to get a 120, 130 meter stick out of it. Start playing with what you have available. There is so much more to this than what I can show you on film. Not because I don't want to or I'm hiding something, but because you can't hold it and feel it and touch it, feel its weight and balance and see the details of the contours and hear the sound it makes, right? That's never going to pick up on film. You have to do that yourself, either working with somebody who already knows how to do it or by your own trial and error process. Yet, if you've watched all the way through the videos, you have all the tools to get you well on the road and to a place where you can learn productively the rest of those details. So I hope this helped. If it does, and you'd like to support what you're doing, I would be most grateful if you were interested in joining our Patreon and helping support this. This is an unmonetized, unsponsored channel, and honestly, I'd like to keep it that way. But to keep it that way, I do need, some support so that I can keep putting these out, investing my own time and money in them, and hopefully at some point in the future putting more time into that for more and better content. So I would be most grateful if you're interested in there, or subscribe or drop a comment, help the algorithm push it and know that you're enjoying it. And most of all, I hope that you'll join us here next time at Old Ways Rising Farm for another awesome project. Till then, have a blessed day.